In the heart of Tucson, Arizona, tucked away in a quiet neighborhood framed by the rugged Catalina foothills, lived an elderly woman whose life, for decades, had been filled with love, family, and routine. Nancy Guthrie, 84 years old, was a mother, a grandmother, and a steadfast presence in the life of her daughter, Savannah Guthrie, a household name and co-anchor of the Today Show. To anyone passing by her modest home, it would have seemed like just another calm street in an unassuming part of the city. Birds chirped in the early mornings, the sun cast warm golden light across terracotta rooftops, and neighbors went about their lives, oblivious that behind closed doors, the stage was being quietly set for a mystery that would grip the nation. Nancy was not just any mother or grandmother. She was the center of a close-knit family, known for her sharp mind, gentle humor, and unwavering care for her loved ones. She had spent decades nurturing a home filled with laughter, stories, and stability. Her relationship with Savannah was particularly special, one built on years of shared experiences, unwavering support, and a bond that only a mother and daughter can truly understand. Friends and family would describe Nancy as thoughtful, dependable, and fiercely loyal, someone who always put the needs of others above her own. Even at 84, she maintained a daily rhythm of small tasks, tending to her home, her garden, and her own well-being, though she relied on assistance for certain medical needs. But life, as calm and ordinary as it seemed in Tucson, was about to take a dramatic and unsettling turn. What started as a quiet evening in a peaceful neighborhood would soon evolve into an intense and high-stakes search for a missing woman, capturing attention far beyond the borders of Arizona. In the coming days, what was assumed to be a routine disappearance would be revealed as a situation far more sinister, one that would transform Nancy Guthrie's home into a focal point for law enforcement, media, and the public alike. And it all began with the simple fact that Nancy Guthrie, a woman who had lived her life surrounded by family, comfort, and familiarity, simply did not come home as expected. Before we dive deeper into the events that unfolded and explore the chilling investigation that followed, I want you to take a moment and make sure you hit that subscribe button. If you're fascinated by true crime stories that unravel the ordinary into the extraordinary and want to stay updated on cases like this one as they develop, subscribing ensures you won't miss a single episode. Also, give this video a like if you're ready to explore the story of Nancy Guthrie's disappearance, a story that is as compelling as it is mysterious. On the evening of January 31st, 2026, Nancy Guthrie was last seen inside her home in Tucson, Arizona. She followed her usual routines that evening, moving through the familiar rhythm of a life shaped by decades of habits, care, and precision. Her home was quiet, orderly, and peaceful, reflecting the life of a woman who had always valued structure and routine. That night, however, something would disrupt the calm. Nancy was expected to attend church the next morning, a commitment she had faithfully observed for years. It was more than a ritual. It was a connection to her community, a space where she drew comfort and familiarity. But when morning arrived, Nancy did not show up. Calls from family went unanswered. Messages remained unread. Her absence, at first confusing, quickly became alarming. Her daughter, Savannah, far away, became increasingly worried as hours passed with no word. Every attempt to reach Nancy only deepened the anxiety. It was unlike her to vanish without notice. Friends and family, accustomed to her reliability, felt a creeping sense of dread. Something was not right. Concerned, family members decided to check on her. They drove to her home, hearts heavy with unease. Arriving at the familiar residence, they noticed immediately that the usual signs of life were missing. Doors were shut, rooms appeared untouched, and her personal items remained where she had left them. There was no indication she had stepped out or left voluntarily. The silence in the house was stark, the air heavy with tension. Every detail that had once been ordinary now seemed significant. The chair where she usually sat, the kitchen table she often prepared meals at, the small trinkets that filled her home, all were in place, undisturbed, yet Nancy was gone. The reality settled in slowly, then sharply. she was missing. Not out running errands, not visiting a friend, not momentarily absent. She had disappeared entirely. Family members searched the rooms, calling her name, checking closets, retracing the steps she had taken earlier that evening. The quiet was deafening. Minutes turned into hours. The sense of normalcy they had counted on crumbled, replaced by confusion, fear, and a gnawing worry that grew with each unanswered call. Nancy Guthrie, an elderly woman who had always been present and dependable, was gone. From a life of routine and stability, she had vanished without explanation. The neighborhood, once calm and serene, now felt heavy with uncertainty, and the absence of one beloved woman sent ripples of worry through everyone who knew her. By the following morning, the concern for Nancy Guthrie had grown into urgent alarm. Her family, after hours of unanswered calls and unsuccessful attempts to locate her, contacted local authorities. The disappearance of an elderly woman, known to be independent yet reliant on daily routines and medication, prompted immediate attention. What had begun as quiet worry now became a coordinated effort to locate her. Law enforcement responded quickly, treating the situation with the seriousness it demanded. Officers arrived at Nancy's home, assessing the scene, talking with family members, and gathering any details that could explain her sudden absence. They noted the orderly state of the house, the absence of signs that she had left voluntarily, and the presence of her personal items, including her medications. Each detail added to the urgency, signaling that something was deeply wrong. The search expanded rapidly. Ground teams fanned out across the neighborhood, canvassing streets, alleys, and nearby trails. Drones hovered above, scanning rooftops, backyards, and open spaces from the sky. Helicopters joined the effort, circling the area to provide aerial perspectives that could reveal movements or signs of disturbance that might otherwise go unnoticed. Volunteers from the community joined the effort, combing the surrounding streets, parks, and pathways, calling her name and looking for anything out of place. Search dogs, trained to detect human scent, were brought in to pick up any trail that might lead to Nancy's whereabouts. Hours turned into a tense day of searching. Every corner of her neighborhood was checked multiple times. Officers examined roads, nearby businesses, and parking areas. Teams split to cover larger areas, retracing potential routes she might have taken, even though all indications suggested she had not left on her own. Every clue, no matter how small, was considered important. Her absence weighed heavily on all involved, with each passing hour increasing the pressure and fear that time might be slipping away. Despite the exhaustive and coordinated efforts, the day ended without a breakthrough. Nancy Guthrie remained missing. The calm streets that had once framed her life now felt unfamiliar and empty. Neighbors looked on with concern, shaken by the realization that someone who had lived among them peacefully for decades had vanished so suddenly. The search continued into the evening, but the frustration of finding no trace only heightened the sense of urgency. Nancy's disappearance had moved beyond a realm of private concern. It was now a full-scale search operation, involving law enforcement, community volunteers, and specialized teams, all working tirelessly to find her. Every moment mattered, and the weight of the unknown hung heavily over her family, whose hope and fear were intertwined in the growing mystery. As the hours passed and Nancy Guthrie remained missing, the atmosphere surrounding her home shifted. What had started as a worried search began to take on a more alarming dimension. Authorities, after assessing the residence and the circumstances of her disappearance, soon made a decisive announcement. Nancy Guthrie's home was now officially a crime scene. The declaration was stark, signaling that investigators were no longer treating this as a routine missing person case, but as something far more serious. Inside the home, officers carefully examined the environment. Every detail mattered. The position of furniture, the state of her personal belongings, and the absence of any signs of forced entry. Investigators noted that many items Nancy would have needed if she had left voluntarily were still in place. Her medications, essential for her daily health, had not been taken. Personal items, ones she would never leave behind under normal circumstances, remained untouched. These observations painted a troubling picture. It was increasingly clear that her disappearance was not a matter of her simply stepping out or choosing to go somewhere without informing anyone. Nancy's age and physical condition added urgency to the situation. At 84, she had limited mobility, which made it unlikely she could have wandered far on her own. She required daily medication, and her routines were well established and predictable. For a woman of her age and capabilities to disappear in this manner raised immediate concerns about her safety and well-being. The combination of her vulnerability, the untouched medications, and the absence of personal items that she would normally carry suggested a scenario in which she had not left voluntarily. Investigators began to look for clues that could explain her sudden disappearance. They documented the scene meticulously, taking photographs, making notes, and searching for anything out of the ordinary. Every minor detail could be a piece of the puzzle. A misplaced object, a door slightly ajar, anything that could indicate what had happened. Even the smallest anomaly became critical in forming a timeline of events. Outside the home, the community began to grasp the seriousness of the situation. Neighbors watched as officers moved in and out, noting the unusual presence of law enforcement. The air, once quiet and calm, now carried a sense of tension and concern. Family members, grappling with fear and uncertainty, waited anxiously for updates, understanding that the shift from a missing person search to a crime investigation marked a pivotal and frightening turn in the case. Nancy Guthrie, a woman who had lived a life of routine, stability, and care, was now at the center of a serious criminal inquiry. The home that had been her sanctuary had become a scene of investigation, and every moment that passed without answers intensified the fear for her safety and the urgency to uncover what had happened. As investigators delved deeper into Nancy Guthrie's disappearance, the situation grew increasingly alarming. Officials began to express serious concerns that she may have been taken against her will. The combination of her age, her limited mobility, and the fact that essential medications and personal items had been left behind painted a disturbing picture. There was little evidence to suggest that Nancy had left voluntarily or that her disappearance was the result of any simple accident. The signs pointed toward the possibility of foul play, and authorities treated each lead with heightened urgency. Investigators began to piece together a timeline, and early assessments suggested that the disappearance likely occurred during the night. It was a period when the neighborhood was quiet, streets were empty, and few neighbors were awake to observe any unusual activity. The cover of darkness, investigators believed, could have provided the opportunity for someone to enter the property, approach Nancy, and remove her from her home without leaving obvious traces. This raised troubling questions about the circumstances surrounding her disappearance and the potential involvement of another person. Detectives immediately began to examine all available evidence that could shed light on the case. Security cameras in the area, both private and public, were reviewed to track any unusual movements or vehicles. License plate reader data was collected to identify unfamiliar cars that may have been near her home during the critical hours. Each frame of footage, each recorded detail, was scrutinized for anomalies. A person walking too slowly, a vehicle parked in an unusual location, or any pattern that did not fit the ordinary rhythm of the neighborhood. In addition to technological measures, authorities reached out to the community for assistance. Flyers were distributed, public appeals were made, and neighbors were asked to check their own surveillance systems for any signs of movement or suspicious activity. Investigators emphasized that even the smallest detail could prove critical. A passing vehicle, a brief interaction, a shadow in the background. Anything that might appear insignificant at first could become a vital clue in the unfolding investigation. The sense of urgency intensified with each passing hour. Nancy Guthrie's absence was no longer just a mystery. It was a growing crisis. The combination of her vulnerability, the nighttime circumstances of her disappearance, and the lack of voluntary indicators left investigators with one stark conclusion. Nancy was likely removed from her home by someone else, and every possible lead had to be explored immediately. Family, authorities and the local community were left grappling with fear and uncertainty, united by the shared hope of finding her safe and unharmed. As the search for Nancy Guthrie intensified, her family was thrust into a storm of worry, fear, and uncertainty. Savannah Guthrie, her daughter and co-anchor of the Today Show, made the immediate decision to step away from her work. The bright lights of the television studio, the carefully scheduled segments, and the routines of live broadcasting faded in importance. Nothing mattered more than the safety and well-being of her mother. Savannah focused all of her energy on the search, coordinating with authorities, connecting with neighbors, and keeping close contact with family members who were spread across different locations, all united by the same anxious hope that Nancy would be found. In the midst of this turmoil, Savannah took to the public, issuing a heartfelt statement. She thanked law enforcement for their tireless efforts, acknowledging the seriousness with which they treated the case and the dedication they displayed in following every lead. She expressed gratitude toward the community, who had quickly mobilized to support the search, offering assistance, checking surveillance cameras, and keeping watch over the neighborhood. Savannah's words were not only a message of appreciation, but also a plea for continued vigilance, encouraging anyone with information, no matter how small, to come forward. The statement carried more than just words. It revealed the human dimension of this crisis. Savannah spoke with the weight of a daughter desperate for answers, her voice carrying the concern and love that had always defined her relationship with her mother. Viewers and the public could sense the depth of her fear and the determination behind every sentence. She made it clear that this was not just a missing person case. It was a personal, urgent matter that required the attention and care of everyone involved. Her colleagues at the Today Show also recognized the gravity of the situation. They publicly acknowledged her absence from the broadcast, offering support and understanding. Behind the scenes, messages of concern and solidarity poured in from coworkers, friends, and the extended television family. The recognition of her absence served as a reminder that Nancy's disappearance was not an isolated family struggle, but one that resonated widely, touching the hearts of those who knew Savannah and those who followed the unfolding events from afar. Throughout it all, the family remained steadfast, navigating the emotional toll of uncertainty while participating in the search in every way they could. Each hour that passed without news heightened their anxiety, but it also strengthened their resolve. For Savannah, stepping away from work and placing herself at the center of the search was more than a personal decision. It was an expression of love, commitment, and unyielding hope that her mother would be found safe and returned home. As the hours turned into days, the disappearance of Nancy Guthrie remained unresolved, and the urgency surrounding the case only intensified. Authorities made it clear that no possibilities were being ruled out. Every potential scenario, from an accidental fall to deliberate foul play, was being treated seriously, but the details of Nancy's age, limited mobility, and reliance on daily medication made the situation exceptionally urgent. Each passing moment without her being found heightened the risk to her health and safety, making the search not just a matter of locating a missing person, but of potentially saving a life. Detectives quickly brought in additional expertise to handle the complexity of the case. Homicide teams were involved, signaling the seriousness with which investigators approached the situation. They were tasked with piecing together the events leading up to Nancy's disappearance, examining the crime scene, interviewing neighbors, analyzing timelines, and reviewing all possible sources of evidence. Their work was meticulous and exhaustive, with the understanding that every overlooked detail could mean the difference between solving the case and allowing it to remain a mystery. The investigation was wide-ranging. Authorities reviewed security camera footage from the neighborhood and nearby streets, looking for any unusual activity during the night or early morning hours. They examined license plate reader records to track any vehicles that did not belong in the area. Officers canvassed nearby businesses and spoke to anyone who might have seen or heard anything unusual. Even seemingly minor details, a stranger walking through the neighborhood, an unexpected car in a driveway, or a faint sound in the night were treated as potentially significant. In addition to the efforts of law enforcement, public involvement became a critical element of the investigation. Authorities urged anyone with information, no matter how small, to come forward. Tips from neighbors, local residents, or even those passing through the area could provide essential leads. Flyers, community alerts, and public appeals emphasized that this was a case where collective awareness could make a real difference. Every report was logged, every observation examined, and every possible connection pursued with diligence. The stakes were higher than ever. Nancy Guthrie's absence was not just a matter of concern for her family. It was a case that demanded immediate and thorough investigation. Investigators worked around the clock, aware that her medical needs, combined with her vulnerability, made time a critical factor. Each step of the inquiry was driven by the same urgent goal: to locate Nancy and ensure her safety, while uncovering the truth behind the circumstances of her disappearance. Nancy Guthrie, an 84-year-old mother and grandmother, vanished from her home in Tucson, Arizona, under circumstances that remain deeply troubling. Despite the tireless efforts of law enforcement, volunteers, and the community, there has been no confirmed trace of her. The details of her disappearance continue to raise serious questions. How could a woman who had lived a life of routine, surrounded by family and neighbors, simply disappear from her own home? Was this the act of someone who intended her harm, or is there another explanation yet to be uncovered? The central mystery persists. What exactly happened to Nancy Guthrie? Investigators have left no stone unturned, examining the home meticulously, reviewing surveillance footage, tracking vehicles, canvassing the neighborhood, and appealing to the public for any information. Every lead is pursued, every detail scrutinized, yet the answer remains elusive. Nancy's absence is not just a missing person case. It is a high-priority criminal investigation, one that has captured the attention of a nation and left her family in a state of constant worry and uncertainty. Her disappearance is especially concerning because of her vulnerability. At 84, she relied on daily medication and had limited mobility, making her safety and well-being immediate priorities. The fact that her medications and personal items were left behind strongly suggests that she did not leave voluntarily. The involvement of homicide teams and the treatment of her home as a crime scene highlight the seriousness of the situation. These facts paint a picture of a disappearance that is both unusual and alarming, raising urgent questions about who may be responsible and what may have occurred during those critical hours. For the public, Nancy's case serves as a reminder of how quickly a life can change and how fragile the safety of even the most ordinary routines can be. Authorities continue to urge anyone with information to come forward, emphasizing that even a small detail could prove crucial. The search is ongoing, the investigation active, and the hope remains that Nancy will be found safe. But until answers are uncovered, the questions linger, and the mystery of her disappearance remains unresolved. If you've been following this case and want to stay updated on every development, make sure to subscribe to our channel. Hit the notification bell so you're alerted the moment new information emerges. If you found this story compelling, give this video a like and share your thoughts in the comments. Your engagement helps us bring attention to cases like Nancy's and keeps the search for truth alive. Nancy Guthrie's disappearance remains a puzzle, a stark reminder of how quickly ordinary life can turn into a harrowing mystery. And while the answers are still out there, one thing is certain: her story will continue to captivate, concern, and call for action until she is found.